Hi, my name is Paul Arnold and I'm a qualified psychotherapist and I'm also a trained coach. And today's session is empowering personal development and self-discovery. Again, huge subject. I've got hundreds of books about personal development here, which is what first started me on my personal travel towards becoming a psychotherapist. And I'm going to sort of talk some theory, I'm going to give some sort of behavioural and cognitive strategies and tips, but I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the role that psychotherapy can play. Psychotherapy for me really works more powerfully at the emotional level. It's to really dig into what makes us who we are and to become this embodied self where we are in touch with all of us, and in particular we're in touch with our emotion. It's our being, which I think is as important in personal development as is in the doing, and we'll discuss some of that a little bit later. So in the therapy room, I commonly hear words like, I just don't know who I am, I need to discover myself. Or the other view is, I never made the most of who I am. And we often say that in therapy, we do one of three things. We're either helping someone deal with their mystery in their life, who am I? We're helping to deal with their mastery, I need to somehow manage my emotions better. Or we're dealing with their history, trying to unpack what's happened to them. Now, in theory-wise, if we look at the sort of humanistic principles, a fundamental human need that we have is this idea to grow, this idea to fulfill our potential. Nietzsche, famously said, become who you are, and this whole idea about discovering who we are is very much sitting at the heart of what often happens in the therapy room. Bateson has a very nice model, which I referred to quite a few times, which has these sort of different levels. We have the identity level about who we perceive ourselves to be. Under that, we have our beliefs and our values, what defines us. And then underneath that, we have our capabilities, our unique skill set. And then all this leads into defining how we behave in the world. And that's obviously is also influenced by the environment which we are in. But when we're looking at this, is like, who am I? What are my skill sets? What are my values? Are really powerful spaces that I think we do a lot of work about self-discovery in. And if we look, at, some of the, the work, in psychotherapy, all about what happened in the very earliest years in our lives, is, we had very important, influential people in our lives, our primary caregivers, our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, schooling, brothers, sisters, etc. All become really powerful influences on who we become. And they may unconsciously be what I call introjecting scripts into us. This idea about who I need to be accepted within this world, surrounded by these people. And some will give you've got to be the perfect child. So there won't be unconditional love, there'll be a conditionality upon that stuff. Or we may develop within ourselves, as Bowlby talks about, this internal working model, this idea about what are the rules of the game of life? And how do I need to be in this space? And sometimes we get it right and sometimes we get it wrong. And so sometimes we have a false self that we project out to help keep ourselves in a place of acceptance, a place to be loved and liked. And very often we've got to re-examine that and say, is that working for us now? Is that really true? Has that always been a false mask we've had to wear? And who is the real person underneath that? So, some sort of strategies I really advise. I really think, doing some work upon discovering who you are. So one of the things I sort of say is maybe go ask 8 people, give me 8 adjectives that describe me. You know, positive and negative gives you some other outside of you, because sometimes we have a very false imagery of who we really are. I'm not saying that definitely they will have it right either, but it just gives you this multiplicity of perspective. But I think one of the important things I encourage people to is to look at your values. You know, your values is just a belief that you have, that something is important for you in your life. And I see there to be a number of different ways you look at that. The first thing is you look at what makes you angry. Because what makes you angry is someone has transgressed a value you have. The other thing is that what are you ashamed about? What have you embarrassed? That's where you have transgressed your own values. So now we're starting to get a picture. And then I often say, like, now look at the behaviors you do. And I think, look at everyday things. So for example, you know, we've all got the same 24 hours and we all choose to do things. And some people choose to go to the gym, other people choose to go out for a night out, other people choose to do other things. And within those are the unconscious values. What do we value more? Because values are on a hierarchy, right? Some values trump other values, and understanding that and recognizing that. And then there's also looking at the big decisions you made in your life, the decisions you made yourself, not influenced by anyone else, and think, what made me go and do that versus that? They become really important things. And then I think it's really important that we look at, where do we feel most alive? What behaviors, what settings do we feel, my God, I feel most me? That helps us really discover more about, this is what's really important. This is where I feel most alive, and this is where I feel most dead. So all those things start to help. And we start to do work upon, what is our purpose? You know, existentialism talks very much about what's our meaning, what's our purpose? You know, and, you know, I'm not particularly sort of religious. I don't decry anyone else's religion, but there's, you know, I sort of view that it's not as if there is some innate piece of, you know, nugget inside of it, which is our fundamental purpose. Some people believe that. I don't want to decry that. But actually, I think it's to be discovered. And when we've found it, and maybe it doesn't last forever, but it's to have a purpose, have a meaning, gives us a goal to aim towards, and it gives us motivation and gives us resilience to actually address all the hiccups and the roadblocks in the way to get there. Because then we feel alive, we feel like this has meaning in our life, you know? So psychotherapy really helps, because we can really help dig deep into discovering who you really are and why you are the way you are, to allow you to become much more authentic and live what I sense a truer life, and not live a life of lies, you know? And also it can really help to remove the fears and the lack of confidence which is holding you back, because so often than not, it's those artificial fears and phobias and the belief systems that we've been given about ourselves that stop us doing what we really need to do. So I hope that helps.